Okay, so a very good afternoon, everybody. And in today's discussion, we want to talk about new criticism. So we are now starting with the discussion of the paper on literary theory and criticism. You already have done a bridge course. You were given the task for a bridge course, and wherein you have got a basic understanding of critical thoughts of a Greek writer, Greek thinker, Aristotle, and whatever is said in poetics. And we have also discussed about that. We have also discussed about the highlights of Plato, Aristotle thing. And then you have discussed about English critic, that is Dryden, and his essay also we have studied, and the highlights about how he is looking at comparative analysis of whether the French are superior or English, or whether the ancient are superior or the modern. And we have seen that the point of comparison is never to prove who is superior or who is inferior, but to see how history is unfolding, or to see that how the things are happening subsequently, how the things were there in the past, what things are happening today, and how things may move on, how we can evaluate the contribution of the modern, of the contribution in the context of the past. That is how the comparison should help us rather than doing the comparison. Uh, he also gives a very good example of a comparatist. He also compares Ben Jonson and William Shakespeare also, wherein he says that Ben Jonson obviously is a better dramatist than Shakespeare, but still he loved William Shakespeare with all the faults that he has got because of his comprehensive soul, and he says that he can live up to the expectations whenever the occasion is given to him. Then we discussed the third one was Wordsworth as a critic. Preface to Lyrical Ballads is what we have seen. And there how Wordsworth has a kind of a paradox within himself. Yes? The paradoxical observations or self-contradictory observations which are integral part of Wordsworth's preface that we have seen. Like he says that poet should be a common man, but then he says that he is one who is bestowed with a genius. He is a genius who is there, who has got a better way of understanding human emotions and feelings. So that is not possible with common human beings, that they can't have that comprehensive soul of looking at all kinds of things there. About language also he said it is the language of common men, but then selection of language, he says that. And then he says poetry is spontaneous, and then tranquility is there for that. So that part we have seen. After Wordsworth, we briefly touched upon a Victorian critic, that is Matthew Arnold. A study of poetry we discussed, and you also appeared in one test to understand Matthew Arnold. Matthew Arnold's study of poetry can be seen as a text which is a precursor of new criticism. So new criticism wants to, like for example, say that there should be a textual analysis. Textual analysis, or it tries to say that there is a very close reading of words in poem. There is a very close reading of the words in poem there. And then all the analysis that we do of the language of poetry or the words in the poem to understand what the poem wants to say. And this is a very interesting difference that also comes here, is that in new criticism now people will not ask a question like what a poet wants to say in a poem. Yeah? But the question changes to what a poem wants to say. This is a very interesting difference which we see in new criticism. So it is not about what the poet wants to say, but it is what the poem wants to say. Now, poem will speak through words. Poem will speak through words. So we will do the analysis of words only here. What are the words telling, and how do we read the meaning of the words? Meaning of the words. So the concentration by and large is on the meaning, or let us say meanings, possible meanings of the word there. The question may come in mind that can a word mean variety of things, that you want to say meanings instead of meaning? Well, the answer is right, yes. So we may have as we call it connotative meaning, or we also can have denotative meanings of the words there. So denotative meaning means a dictionary meaning, literal meaning, dictionary meaning, and connotative means metaphorical meaning. Metaphorical meaning. So it can be an implied meaning, implied way of telling the things. Denotative means something that is a direct reference to somebody. That is how we can see, and many other things also we can refer here. So they want to do textual analysis of the poem, and from there it emerges. Now these ideas are also in a different way discussed by Matthew Arnold when he speaks about detachment, a necessary detachment, or a kind of aliptata that is necessary for a critic to pass judgment on a work of art. So he used to say, if you want to reach to a real estimate, then to reach to a real estimate of a poem, then the critic should be free from, or should be aware that he is not making fallacies. What kind of fallacies? Mistakes, that is about personal fallacy and historical fallacy. So now what is necessary here is that you have to see the words of the poem without knowing about who is the writer or when is it written. If you are aware about when, then you know about history. If you are aware about who is the writer, you know about the person. And then unless you are not free from who and when. Yes, yeah.
Sure. So there was a reason behind this. I.A. Richards, who did a practical experiment on students
Yes,
in
yeah.
1929,
Yes.
he believed that he gave poems to his Cambridge students, and he told them, you just give a comment on that.
Yes.
So there were not poets' names were not written in the poem. So students gave the comments on the poems, and then we come to know that it is not important, it is a famous poem, but students still criticized that poem. So it was kind of a practical experiment by
Yes.
I. Richards.
I.
That
Richards.
says that poem is more important than
Then the
poems
things. Yes, so that was his practical criticism. That is the work which comes here as a part of this reading also. So so that one can be free, but by the time we reach to I.A. Richards, we have to see the history of that you can't suddenly see that, well, I.A. Richards is doing this, but that is, you are growing on something. So I.A. Richards or 20th century criticism was growing on something that was happening earlier. And that is where Matthew Arnold is very important. The idea that he gave about detachment, or the problems of personal fallacies and historical fallacies, and if one wants to be free from that, then one will have to read the poem itself without knowledge of the poet or this. So I.A. Richards did the practical experiment with that, and then tried to see that what happens. How do we read that? That is what he has done. So locating I.A. Richards, we want to discuss I.A. Richards, figurative language, but how do we locate I.A. Richards into a long debate or discussion where we fix him? That becomes very important or necessary also. So that is how this point, and that is why studying Matthew Arnold also is very important or necessary thing, that what ideas were there. And subsequently things have grown from Aristotle to Longinus to Sir Philip Sidney, then Dryden, and then many lesser known critics also came. And slowly and steadily from there we enter into new criticism, wherein we see that the textual analysis, so if this is the text, the text should be cut from external connections. Should be cut from external connections. Now, what are the external connections of the text? So we can say that society, psychology, author, time in which it is written, all those, history, and all these things are external connections that also gives meaning to the text. Now, new criticism wants to say that we want to study the work of art without all these external things, only the text of the poem. And this is what we will also do. But like today, after our class, I will give you several poems. And Monday, we will ask you that how are you analyzing this particular poem? How are you analyzing with this context? Where you try to keep all this thing outside and then try to read the meaning of the words only. So if you say that the meaning of this poem is so and so, I will ask you that which are the words which are telling you? How will you read the words that it is telling you? And then we will try to see. Hypothetically, we can say that this is a very interesting way of reading a poem or understanding the language and the meanings of work, but is not complete a study of a poem. It seems that something is left out, or something of an outside is necessary to understand the inside of a poetry also. Perhaps we'll reach to that conclusion. Perhaps we'll reach, but right now you can keep that in mind. That is it necessary to understand all these external things to understand a poem? Can we understand a poem without any kind of external connections, as new criticism wants us to read a poem? Is it a complete reading of a poetry, or we may lack something in that? Where do we lead to when we do these kinds of readings are there? We are not going to the conclusion right now that what happens. That will wait for what comes out of our experiment. When we do that, what comes out of that. But what the new critics are actually telling, and there are a series of new critics, a few of them we will try to quickly touch upon. Few of the critics. So we have to start with T.S. Eliot, and you all are aware about his famous essay, T.S. Eliot's famous essay, Tradition and Individual Talent. Yes, the essay. So I want something from you about how do you read that, or what is your understanding of T.S. Eliot in this context of new criticism, or in case if you are not able to connect with the new critics, then also whatever ideas that came from T.S. Eliot, which according to you are very attractive, or you thought that this is something significant. And if there is any question or doubt, that also you can ask. If you are not able to comprehend something, so that question also you can raise, that this is there. Okay, so who will be the first to tell that? What is your understanding of this? Yes? Yes.
In reference to this new criticism, T.S. Eliot gave a theory of impersonal poetry. As a new criticism, it is stated that text should be read from keeping away the external connections. Then in the theory of impersonal poetry given by T.S. Eliot, he is saying that the poet should not give anything personal in the poet. His poet's personal emotions should be kept away from the poem. From the line, it is stated, poetry is not a turning loose of emotion, but an escape from the emotion. And it is also explained through the scientific reaction of preparing sulfuric acid that as catalyst is not being a part of a result solution, same way poet should write, but his emotions, personal emotion, should not be the work resulted.
Okay. So there is a very interesting quote that poetry is not turning loose of emotions. Okay, let me just help me write that full quote here. Yeah? The first thing that we get from S Eliot in this context. Poetry is
not turning loose of emotion, but an escape from emotion.
Escape from emotion. Okay? So here, what we see here in this quote is that he is talking about the theory of his theory of depersonalization. Yes, theory of depersonalization, wherein he is more near to the theory of detachment given by Matthew Arnold than to the theory of poetry, that is spontaneity, given by Wordsworth. So when T.S. Eliot is saying this, and where he becomes a part of new criticism, he says that there is not personal emotions which are expressed in this. So there is rather an escape from the emotion here. In the same line, there is another quote also, if anybody can get that quote, another quote in the same line.
It is not the expression of personality, but an escape from personality.
It is not
not the expression of personality, but an escape from personality.
Okay, so it is not an expression but an escape from personality. So poet and poet's personality should not get reflected in the poetry, but he has to rather kill his personality. He has to kill his self when he is writing a poem. So it means that the better the person is absent, the better the poem. The more the person is absent, the more the person who is writing a poem is absent from the poetry, the better the poetry. And he would say that this is necessary because poetry is more important than self. Poetry is, that is literature, that which is more important than an individual. Literature is something that is coming from bygone ages, and you are there for a while to add something to that long tradition of literature. So you are not important. Literature is more important. So you have to kill yourself for the sake of poetry, or a literature that is at hand, what one person is doing there. Now, this is the idea which are quite opposite to the romantic idea. Romantic idea is expression of personality. It is subjectivity everywhere rooted there, and instead here there is completely different idea that he says there. But these ideas are very important to understand new criticism also. So when there are poets who also think that poetry is created in this way, or written in this way, so when you read a poem also, there is no need to find author inside the work of art. There is no author at all. There is no author. There is an escape from the personality of author in good work of art. So there is no need. So this is the connection between new criticism and why T.S. Eliot, who as such is not a new critic purely, but his ideas initiated the movement of new criticism, which obviously later on he rejected this idea, and he also said that this method is more like this lemon squeezing method. Lemon squeezing, we take a last drop of lemon by squeezing it. Too much of squeezing of lemon. The same way you are squeezing poetry a lot to get the meaning out of that. So later on he did not agree with this, but well, it is attached with his idea about depersonalization and other things there. Okay, are there any other things from T.S. Eliot's which is significant, important to be seen? Yes.
He always insists by his essay that old orthodoxies should be more important than new trends. Then how, if new writers are coming and they are not adding or mixing up their own individual ideas or their own personal emotions in the poetry, then how poetry or literature can get new ideas in a new variation ways.
Okay, that's a very interesting point that Eliot is talking about. So it's quite conflicting if you see the title of the essay also, that tradition and individual talent, which is opposite, because individual talent will not be traditional. Individual talent will not be traditional. If you are traditional, then you will be a part of some school. You will not be a maker of a school. You will not be a maker of a new school unless you have individual talent. Okay, anybody getting an answer to this? He is giving answer to this also. Anybody is getting what is the answer to this? What he wants to give? Yes.
I'm not confirm about it is answer, but he gave an example. There is an example in a video that when there is a heritage, a historical place, then we are not creating a historical place again. We are adding, we are doing a flooring or renovating and adding a minar for its better look. The same way, pastness of the history should be remembered, and in the pastness, something should be added. In the vastness of the literature, something should be added. That it is not like mere copy of tradition, but adding to the tradition, adding of individual ideas to the tradition, so that the ancient literature is also historical sense is needed.
Yes. Now, yeah, that is a very important word, historical sense. That is very important. So, once you get what is historical sense, how is he defining historical sense? If you can get, you get the answer also of this contradictory viewpoint that Eliot is talking about. Yes, anybody can get the yes. Yeah.
Yes, the perception of historical sense is not only about pastness, but it is also about present.
Yes, it is not only about the pastness, but also about the present. Can you read that full quote? If anybody can read the full quote.
The historical sense involves a perception not only of the pastness of the past, but of its presence.
It involves historical sense involves the perception or not only of the pastness of the past, but of its presence also. So this pastness, this pastness. So something of the past which is still alive in the present, which is very useful in the present also, which is very significantly necessary to keep in mind. That is that pastness of the past. And it is very much present in the present moment also. So when anybody is writing a poem today, if that person has that perception of pastness, then he understands today that on what poetry should be written and on what it should not be written. So poetry is all about, for example, various kinds of events and emotions. It obviously is, poetry is the raw material of the poetry is events and emotions. Various events and emotions that makes for the poetry. But which emotions, which events, how would a poet decide that on this there should be a poem and this emotion? Well, that perhaps comes from the perception of pastness, which is useful in the present moment. So that is where he says historical sense is very important for the writers there. So traditional, he says all writers are traditional because all dead poets are living in the present poets. All dead poets are alive, they are living. The dead bones of the poets are still there, even in the present time. Now this we can say in a different way, like When I use a language, for example, if I say that this famous line from Robert Burns, I think, my love is like a red, red rose. If I say, now it means that the word rose or red rose, it already had some kind of a meaning that is given by the dead poets. And now I am just using that. I'm not giving the meaning, but that meaning is given by somebody. So that meaning, what is that meaning? Is when you say red, red rose, you are repeating a word. So there is a meaning in repetition also. In figures of speech, we will call it alliteration. Something is repeated. But then there is a meaning in repetition, and so you are repeating. It is not unnecessary repetition of the word also. So who has given the meaning into repeating a word? Dead poets. Dead poets have given. And then it comes like rose for this, red for this, also the meanings are given. That is how the dead poets remain alive with the new poet, unknowingly, is not aware about it. So that pastness remains alive with everybody. So in that sense, it says all are traditional. Nobody can escape the influence of tradition in that sense. Then the question that comes, that then how can new work be written? How can a new work be written if everybody is traditional and they just follow the thing? So he said this idea that this historical monument or the monument of literature or the monument of past is something in form of a liquid. It is not static. We normally have an idea that when people use the word monument, it means a huge structure. Now you can't do anything with that huge structure. It is static. Whereas Eliot's concept is that it is not static. It is thorough. It is in liquid form. So when a really talented person will come, then the entire history or the tradition will adjust itself behind an individual talent. Now that is a very novel idea that he says that history is not dead. It means history is not dead. Past is not dead. It is very much alive. And whenever a very extraordinarily talented person, an individual talent will emerge, then the past will readjust itself and stand behind the individual talent, which reminds us of one of the famous dialogue from Bollywood film. हम जहां खड़े रहते हैं वहीं से लाइन शुरू होती है, हम लाइन में खड़े नहीं रहते. So standing in the line is being a traditional, but if you are really talented, wherever you will stand there will be a line. So that is the idea. Now if people ask you that how do you prove this, how do you prove this? You have a history of literature now of so many thousands of years. Do you find that really happening? If you just imagine of the literature, the history of literature that you have studied, from Chaucer, 1350 down the line to 1900, that you have studied, and now also the part of 20th century also. So can you say that whether this is happened anytime? How has it happened? Any example comes in your mind to prove Eliot's point? Anybody can get an illustration of that? Think of the history that you have studied. Yeah. Put this camera. Somebody come here and on. Those who are speaking. Yeah, come. On those who are anybody, if he is giving answer, anybody try to think of the history and see. Was there any individual talent which was not following the footsteps of tradition of writing and it made a new path? Yes.
Sir, obviously that one such example is William Shakespeare. He combined tragedy and comedy and made a new way, comedy.
Okay, yes.
Before,
Yeah.
before that, tragedy and comedy was separately made or written. But now he combined all the things. As we have received like Midsummer Night's Dream, all the things.
Good. Okay, so one example you get is William Shakespeare, yes, who is in a way not a follower of tradition. Yes, he is not. So that's why we have the followers were following classical traditions, Ben Jonson and other. And so we have Shakespearean tragedy. So we discussed that, well, Aristotelian tragedy or Greek tragedy is this and Shakespearean tragedy is this, because he is not a follower of those traditions completely. He is violating freely many of those things. And then what happens? You get a new school of the thoughts, that is Shakespearean tragedy. Shakespeare is an example of that. Then apart from that, anybody else?
Metaphysical poet.
Metaphysical poets. Okay, so what are the challenging?
All are the try to the not follow the old type of poetry and write the own thinking and different of the subject.
Now, on thinking is everybody will say that it is their own thinking. It is a very cliche word, wherein, for example, if you listen to any of the interviews of the film stars, they all will say that our film is a unique film. Nobody has ever made, and then when you watch, you find that 1,000 times such films are made. But there is so now we have to define what is that uniqueness. How do you tell that metaphysical, for example, if you say, then there is a uniqueness in that.
They are beyond the objects, and mainly they use examples from engineering.
Yes, far-fetched image, conceit. Yeah.
Engineering fields or geography or something like which is not related with literature. Such fields like.
So the words that is looking like the old words, but it has meaning that not not everybody cannot understand the meaning behind that. It has the far-fetched images and imagination, and it has a different meaning for the simple words. So it is not following the tradition.
And this difference is coming because they are using this semantic field, is the word that you can say, semantic. Semantic field of different word like geography, mathematics or history, which then it was not a kind of a tradition to use. So that is how you prove that this writers are different in this context. So what is that context, why they are different, that we have to clearly write to prove that point there. Shakespearean tragedy we have discussed, so we are not going into examples that why he is different from the classical or the Greek tradition there. Okay, then who else?
Can we consider Wordsworth as he started using common language, rustic language in the poem?
Yes.
And Lyrical Ballads was an experiment for that. So he began to use the rustic language.
Yes, so the very book Lyrical Ballads is highly criticized, as we discussed earlier also. It is very much criticized. Why it is criticized? Because they are doing something new. They are writing poems, so they are traditional in that sense. But then they are individual talent, like Coleridge and Wordsworth. When they are writing, they are making something new. And then we realize that that is 1798 is the beginning of a new era. So the history of literature has reshuffled itself and stood behind Wordsworth. So that is when an individual talent comes, then the entire things will change in that context also. So that is how these examples are necessary to be seen in terms of individual talent. So Eliot says history is necessary, but it doesn't mean that you have to be a follower. You should have understanding of history. That is why perception of pastness. Perception of pastness is necessary there. So people do not just keep on reinventing the wheel again and again. The same thing they don't tell, but they move on from that. Now, the another concern that Eliot has, anybody has anything else to say or ask, you can. You can ask if there is any doubt, just raise your hand so we can ask you for the question. The another question that might come to this idea is that it means that any new poet, before starting to write a poem, will have to read so many things. Then only you get that historical sense. Pastness, the perception will not come as such without that. Now, for this also, he gave an answer. Eliot gave the answer in the same essay for this also, that he don't want to say that one should be Pandit or Panditya. Pandit also is an English word, means you not to be scholarly into a field before writing. And so he told that the more tardy may have to sweat for it, that is for the historical sense, but the genius will absorb from everything. The genius will absorb, and he gave example of William Shakespeare. And he said that, well, Shakespeare is not a learned, he is not one who has gone to the school to learn Greek, Latin, to imbibe the tradition of literature, as people say that without Greek, Latin or Sanskrit, you can't write a literature. The common perception, because that will give you historical sense. In way, it can. But Shakespeare was not in that way a learned scholar, but he was able to absorb whatever is necessary from surrounding. The life itself is a library. So how you get things from the life, the things which are happening every day are very interesting things. They are more interesting than the stories also. But is the writer aware about the happenings, and then is aware that how to read these happenings? Then the person can get historical sense without even reading everything. And if you can't do that, then you have to read. Then you have to read. So more tardy must sweat for it. The genius can absorb the knowledge. So he says historical sense is something that can be imbibed by people by just keeping the senses open. If they keep the senses open, they will keep on absorbing those things there. And ultimately what is important is that when you sit down to work, are those things helpful to you or not? That is very important. So again we come to what we started today about connecting dots. So can you connect the dots in an effective way or not? Then only there is creative writing. Creative writing in that way is just connecting new dots. In a newer way you connect a dot and there is a new poem. Anybody who is writing a new poem, you will see that they are not writing in new words. There is not a single new word in any new poem. કોઈ પણ નવી પોએમમાં એક પણ નવો શબ્દ હોતો નથી, એ જ જૂના શબ્દો હોય છે. જૂના શબ્દ હોય તો જ એ સમજાય, પણ તો જ વાચકને સમજાય. નવા શબ્દોમાં લખે તો સમજાય નહીં કાંઈ. So you have to use that only. Then why we say new poem? Because those words are connected in different way. They are just connected in a different way. When you make a rangoli, the same colors everybody will use. They are the same colors. Well, there's Diwali time and the same colors are sold everywhere. You can't go and make your own colors. The same, but everybody's rangoli will be different. It will be different. You move on in the Diwali or the New Year day, there will be no repetition of rangoli. So everybody has connected dots in a different way. It is all about just connecting the dots, and then the new way of looking is emerging from that. So it's work of art, creative work, or critical thinking is nothing but connecting the dots. That is how we can say. That is the idea behind historical sense, which he says there. Yes, yeah, you want to say? Yes.
Sir, as you told that the new words are not using the new words, but they are just using the old words used by the ancient poets, and they are making something new out of it. But we have a poet called Nas, American poet, and he is a kind of person or a poet that will make a new word, and that is not understood by people just for the sake of rhyme scheme. It is written that in Wikipedia, I have written read this, that the golden Nas is a poet that uses new word or combines or breaks even breaks a single word to form a rhyme scheme. So
Yeah,
yes.
yes.
It is another thing that you can make.
Yes, so you can bring that poem when we do the analysis. Monday, pick up one of the poem and then you see that how or what is happening there. Now you can say that if you want to break a word, then also you have to use the same old word. Even to break a word, or even when you will try to give a new meaning, what will you do when you want to give a new meaning to the word? Again, you will go for the sound of the word, which is somewhere, and then you will try to add that. So neologism is something that people do. It is not that neologism is not done. People try neologism also. So they try to make new words. But it is not a normal, like entire poem cannot be of new words. Entire poem cannot be of new. That is an experiment that people do. That is how neologism come. So in the days of Shakespeare or Milton, there were very few words in English language. So they have to coin in so many new words. So they have to coin so many new words. So people say that Milton or Shakespeare, they have coined so many new words by the mixture of this language and that language, or the words of some other language also come inside the things there. Even first time when people might have used the word philosophy. Yeah? So we have seen philosophy is made of two words. Yeah? Philo and sophy. So love and knowledge. So it is always there. When the word is made there. That happens. So some experimental poets would use such making of the new words, and it will also go on. It will also continue. People will keep on making new words. Like nowadays, people use the word edutainment. Edutainment. So education and entertainment, which is known as portmanteau. That genre is known as portmanteau. In the lab, you will see a banner of portmanteau, and there are so many such popular portmanteau which are made up of two words, breaking two words, and then that can be made and people use it, and if large number of people like it, it becomes a part of a dictionary also, and that is introduced into dictionary, and people keep on using quite occasionally also all those words also. Or for example, if you see mouse, computer mouse, now this is not the mouse which mouse is meant for. Mouse is mice, mouse, undar. So now when we speak mouse, we understand something else. So there is a new meaning is given to the same word. So the same word is getting new meaning, or you say keyboard or monitor, all this vocabulary of, because computer, semantic field of computer is a new one, which was not there beyond 20th century. It was not there. So and it is using the same words but now in a new way. So the semantic field of computer will say monitor. So monitor were class monitors. Now monitor is what you peep in to see something, or keyboard. You say keyboard means જ્યાં ચાવી ટીંગાડવામાં આવે છે. Now people say keyboard means where you type things. That is keyboard. So the same word, new meanings are also introduced. The same way people may break and make edutainment and infotainment, sheeple, sheepless people, and many. Those words are also made. Also, sometimes by advertisement also, creative use of language, sometimes by poets also. But you can bring a poem, a good poem which there are many such words, or what is it trying to do, that you can bring. So when we do analysis of that, we may come to that, well, this is the word which is a new, and if it is a new word, from where is the meaning coming? That is very important to see. કોઈ પણ શબ્દ નવો હોય તો એનો અર્થ ક્યાંથી આવે છે એ બહુ જાણવું બહુ મહત્વનું છે, કારણ કે ડિક્શનરીમાં નથી. તો લોકો સમજશે કે આપણે કેમ સમજશું, તો આપણે એની આજુબાજુના શબ્દ જોશું. We will see the nearby word, and in relation to other word we will give the meaning to that word. So that is textual analysis that we do. So how do we give meanings to the particular word, કે આ શબ્દનો અર્થ અહીંયા આ જ હોય, બીજો ન હોઈ શકે? એમ શું કામ, કઈ રીતે નક્કી કરીએ છીએ આપણે? કારણ કે એ જે રીતે સંબંધમાં ગોઠવાયેલા છે એકબીજા સાથે. From there we come to know. For example, one of the tests that you have, one question was in your test, in your first mind mapping test, that was about this. Swimming is a good exercise, something like that. There was the word about gerund, if you remember. Gerund, noun, gerund kind of thing. So when you say the word swimming, swimming is a word for a thing. So what is swimming or walking or cycling? You may say it is a verb also, it is a noun also. So if it is a verb also and noun also, then how will you decide whether when you are using it is a verb or a noun? If I say that swimming is a good exercise, so it means swimming is a name of an exercise. Name of anything is noun. So swimming is an exercise, it is a noun. But if say, what are you doing? I am swimming. Then it is an action I am doing. I am doing an action. So it is a verb there. So it is the usage that is deciding. So where the word is coming, there we get that which parts of speech it has. Word itself do not have a part of speech. But you can say that in, on, they are parts of speech. It is a preposition. And if the preposition is right, okay, that also is right. That will also, so that remains prepositions there, but this will keep on changing. So when we say neologism or coining of new words, from where the meaning is coming, that will be. So if you get any good poem, then bring on Monday for that discussion also, that we will also see or do that. So T.S. Eliot, this is how, and very interesting famous quote by him. Again, another one is honest appreciation. Can you read that quote? Honest appreciation and sensitive criticism.
Criticism and sensitive appreciation is directed not upon the poet but upon the poetry.
Okay, let me write that here. Yes, honest.
Honest criticism and sensitive appreciation is directed not upon the poet but upon the poet.
And
Sensitive appreciation is not direct is directed not upon the poetry, not upon the poet but poetry.
yes, this is again a very interesting statement to enter into new criticism. To enter into, as we discussed here also. So whether our honest criticism and our sensitive appreciation of anything, work of art or any other thing, should not be directed upon the person, not upon the person, but the work. Yes, work. So he speaks in terms of literature, but obviously this is a very interesting idea to be taken in terms of life also. For anything that anybody is doing, it is not the appreciation or criticism of an individual, but of the work. The work can be good or bad, but it doesn't mean that the person is good or bad. That is very interesting to see. And also we see that if we like anybody's work, then it's not necessary that you like the person also. Sometimes people have this kind of a fan following of Salman Khan. So you like Salman Khan as an actor, but if you go near Salman Khan, then what happened to Aishwarya Rai and many other heroines? What kind of an abuse you have to suffer, that you also may suffer. So going near the sun is always harmful. If you like sun, durthi darshan, anjali durthi apan, najik jao to basmibut. So any poet, any writer, actor, anybody, it is always the good idea is ke durthi darshan ranyamna, durthi dungar ranyamna, પાસે જાય તો બિહામણા, ડુંગર દૂરથી સારા લાગે, ચડવા જાય તો પસીને રેબજેબ. So it is. So that is very important. Anybody, it is the work, and you may not like the work. So it doesn't mean you do not like the person. You may dislike a work of art, but still you may like a person. Like you may have that. I don't have a problem with a person, but this work I am criticizing. And this distinction is very important distinction also. Very important distinction to be kept in mind time and again, not only for the criticism, but even in life also. Appreciation or criticism, whatever it is, criticism or appreciation of work rather than an individual, of poetry rather than the poet. Now it is from here that this idea will emerge, that now we ask a question, that what the poem wants to say, and not what the poetry, what the poet wants to say, not this but this. So we narrow down that, well, obviously poem is written by a person, by the individual, but well, necessarily we are, as a part of new criticism, trying to see what poem wants to say. That is a part of new criticism. If you are not doing new criticism, then you may involve author also. You can involve author, that well, author's intention, author's biography, author's psychology, everything you can add there. But When you are doing new criticism, then you have to keep it aloof there. So that is this is how new criticism emerges as a new way of reading literature. It gives a new dimension of reading the literature also.
Yeah, sir, I have a question. Can you please explain that labor's code in tradition and individual talent that
Which quote?
tradition is a matter of much wider significance. It cannot be inherited, and if you want it, you must obtain it by great labor. It involves the historical sense.
Yes, yeah, it's a very interesting quote. Yeah. So, yes, let me write key words from that quote here. Yes, what is that?
Tradition is a matter of much wider significance.
Yes, go on.
It cannot be inherited, and if you want it, you must obtain it by great labor. It involves the historical sense.
Yes, so the tradition, he would say, that cannot be inherited. You may get a property in Warsaw. પ્રોપર્ટી મળે આપણને વારસામાં પણ આ ટ્રેડિશન જે ક્રિએટિવ ટ્રેડિશન છે એ ન મળે કોઈ દિવસ. That's why you will not find if William Shakespeare is the surname, then you don't find another person with a Shakespeare surname. So that tradition is lost. The children will not have that thing. Or even many times famous examples of people say Amitabh Bachchan and Abhishek Bachchan. So Abhishek's father and mother both are great actors. But Abhishek is struggling to find a space or to act also. So it means that this cannot be inherited. એ વારસામાં ન આવે ક્યારે. એના માટે મહેનત કરવી પડે, great labor. For this tradition that is a part of creativity. For that everybody will have to do great labor. And then only it cannot be inherited. ક્યારેય વારસામાં ઇનહેરિટન્સમાં ન આવી શકે. એના માટે સખત મહેનતની જરૂર પડે. And also historical sense along with that is necessary for all these things also. Now, being a part of, for example, acting family in terms of Abhishek Bachchan, if we say, or any creative writer, or for example doctors or lawyers, the professions whose children also would become the same into that profession, they may get historical sense because there is an environment of that kind. There is normally an environment of that kind. So normally people are talking about either medicine or law in the normal. So unknowingly right from the childhood they may get that historical sense which unknowingly might be helping them. So when they do labor, that historical sense helps them what to do, what not to do. That is how it can help. But it doesn't mean that that talent can be inherited. That can never be inherited. That for that everybody will have to work hard afresh on that. And that is a very good idea, very interesting democratic idea we get here, which obviously tells against all those monarchy and other those systems where the son or daughter of the king will become the king or queen. Well, here it is not so. You can't inherit even those qualities also. Everybody will have to do great labor to prove themselves in different way and historical sense also. So creativity or that geniusness is never flowing from genes to genes, from parents to children. It will never move on in that way. And innumerable such examples we can find. Sachin Tendulkar, his son, not able to find a space in a team. Sunil Gavaskar, his son, not able to find a space in the national team. So many people you will see, they are talented, but their children may not be. They have to work hard. And those who are talented, their parents may not be so talented. They may not be that way talented, but those children worked hard and they found a space. For everybody it is there. Sometimes we may give an easy way out to see that so and so is of this or that, so the person is of this caliber. But that is not true. That person might have worked very hard also. All those people will have to again work very hard. And when we give examples from sports field or film industry, we find that those are the fields where there are tough competitions, very tough competitions. And then people, if they do not work, then only the aura of parents will not give them success. It is not going to give them. Their hard work becomes necessary in all those fields also. Even in medicine, it is necessary. If people come from the medical background, they may get a good hospital, they can get an easy admission into medical course out of some fee or extra donation and other things. But then, will they be successful as a good doctor? You can't give that guarantee. So that will not happen if those individual capacities are not there with those doctors. Then also they will not get success. Ultimately in the life also, later on in the life, it is not only academic life, it is also the life afterwards, that how people work and then how they perform in the life. That. So this is how these things, tradition, either creative or critical, cannot be inherited. Everybody have to work hard for that. Historical sense helps a lot in understanding this thing. Okay, any other quote or observations from that?
Sir, Eliot gives illustration from the field of science and chemistry. He compares platinum with poet. When process of being sulfurous acid take place, the two gases needed, oxygen and sulfur dioxide, and at that time they have a filament of platinum. In this process, platinum plays indirect role and remain unaffected by any gases. Eliot says that poet is also like platinum. They give total contribution to the work, but when poetry comes out, they remain unaffected and operate.
Yes. So that you are not able to understand?
No, I'm just putting my point.
Yeah, okay. Anybody can explain this point? This he used this example of chemical reaction to prove his point of depersonalization. He want to prove the point of depersonalization. He used analogy or as a metaphor or as an example. He gave the example of this chemical reaction. Yes.
Sir, sir, by general observation, I can only say that a person is a platinum or a catalyst between the feeling and the work. So the how the feeling is expressed through this word. So he works as a catalyst at the left, then the leaves the thing after the work is done. So he got through the poet, the feeling passes and gets converted into the work. And now there is no need to be here. As platinum left leaves.
Yes.
About the catalyst, so platinum merged in oxygen and sulfur dioxide. So I don't think so platinum or the poet lives, but the very essence of the poet is in the poem, so we cannot change it.
Okay. Yes. Anybody else? Yes.
When the scientific reaction of sulfurous acid is taking place, platinum is playing a role. If catalyst is not present, the result of sulfurous acid will not come. So catalyst is necessary. The same way poet is necessary. The ideas of poem, the mind of poem is necessary for creating a poem. But once a poem is presented to the reader should not go to the idea that what was the main idea in the mind of poet, what is the role of my poet's ideology. For an example, poet was sad when he wrote a poem. Once poem is out, then the sadness of the poet's mind should not come in the discussion, or it should not be said that he wrote this because he was sad. Then a main idea should not be affecting to the reader, or his work should be.
Okay. Anybody else to add to this point? So he used this example because his point is very difficult to understand. Now, when we see the romantic subjectivity, we don't have much problem with that. When Wordsworth said there is a spontaneous overflow, so easily we understand that without any problem. That we'll find there is always a person there, and whenever the person writes, obviously the personality of the person, the emotions of the person, the sorrows and suffering or happiness. So when he says that when I behold a rainbow in the sky, my heart leaps up. So well, my heart leaps up. That is very much personal thing. That as soon as I see daffodils dancing or rainbow in the sky, then there is a euphoria of some kind of emotion, and out of that my poetry is created. And we don't have absolutely any problem, because we also feel the similar kind of things when we see such manifestations in nature. We also feel happy, though everybody cannot write a poem like Wordsworth can, but we can feel that. So that subjectivity is easy, but this modern objectivity, this modern objectivity is very difficult to understand, because Eliot goes against that idea and says that, well, it is not subjective, it should be objective, because the poet should remain absent. Poet's emotions and feelings are not very important. What is important is the emotions and feelings required in the poem rather than the man who suffers. So the man who suffers is not as important as the poetry that is at work. So there should be extinction of personality, there should be erasure, there should be self-erasure that should be at work when they write. So this idea is very difficult to understand. That how can it be possible? Anybody can question that. If anybody is writing, then how can you say that, well, that person should remain absent? It is not at all possible. So to prove that point, he came with chemical reaction. That you look at this chemical reaction where when H2SO4 is made, when this acid is made, H2SO4, sulfuric acid is made, there is a need of platinum rod. Platinum rod is required when this chemical. But when you see this, there is no platinum here. There is no platinum in the end result. Now, those gases that will mix only if there is platinum. So it is a catalyst agent. That is why the word catalyst agent. And catalyst agent is just an initiator of some kind of reactions, and then it is no more, nowhere there. And then things happen. In the finished product, there is no platinum. So H2SO4 cannot be made without platinum. It is required, necessary, but in a finished product, there is no platinum. So platinum becomes poet's mind. So poet's mind is required, because it is in the mind that emotions and feelings will mix up. It is necessary. But when the poetry will be created, this poetry, then the poetry should not have the poet. That poet is absent from the poet. That is what he tend to say. A very difficult idea, because time and again we will do the kind of an autobiographical reading or biographical reading, and we always are looking for a poet inside the creative work. Like when you study Orlando, then you are trying to find Virginia Woolf in the work of art. So that is why it is not easy to find this thing. But well, Eliot has this idea that this is a better work of art where the person is absent, and then later on maybe you can find the person also. But if you don't know the person, the work of art remains intact. That also is good. That sometimes it's happen that only if you know the author, then only you can understand the work of art. Only if you know the time in which it is written, then only you can understand it. So you need to understand the time to understand the work of art. You need to understand the history. You need to understand the author, his philosophy of life to understand the work of art. Then it is something else, something that what he is not telling. So all these things are also necessary. And that is what will be our quest also. When we read poem, we'll try to see that how far this poetry can be studied in isolated form, completely aloof from everything, as Eliot wants us to see that poem, detaching it from author, from time, from all kinds of history, sociology, everything, and we try to study to what extent we get a success. What kind of success do we get? And do we understand the entire poem when we do that? These are the questions which we want to see when we try to read the poem there. But keep these questions in your mind for your thinking activity also on IR Recharge. These are the questions. which you are trying to answer. Your answer may be yes also, it may be no also. Your answers may not agree with each other also. No need to agree also. But whatever you feel, that is what you have to write. To what extent yes, to what extent no. Sometimes it can be both, yes also and no also. Then you will say yes in this condition, no in this condition. So that is how you can do thinking activity when you write about or do analysis also, that also. Okay, so that is this reaction. So he says in this it is possible, then in reality also it is possible. That is how he wants to say કે જો અહીંયા શક્ય હોય આ રીતે તો પછી એ વાસ્તવમાં પણ શક્ય હોય કે બધા ઇમોશન્સ અને ફિલિંગ્સ માઇન્ડમાં ભેગા થાય પણ માઇન્ડ એમાં ન હોય, વ્યક્તિ એમાં ન હોય. વ્યક્તિની જરૂર છે કાવ્ય સર્જન માટે, પણ વ્યક્તિ ન હોય તો પણ ચાલે. Today in 21st century we will see in digital humanities that work is also generated by machines. So you don't even require now a poet's mind also. You can now have this poetry without even the mind of the poet. Dada poem the other day we were talking about. So if you have tried to see, nobody has asked me for the link, so you might not have tried. પણ કોઈએ જાતે ગૂગલ કરીને એજ્યુકેટ યોરસેલ્ફ કરી લીધું હોય તો તમે કોઈ ડાડા પોયમ બનાવી હશે. પણ આ બધું શેર થાય છે એનો મતલબ એમ કે મારા મનમાં એવું છે કે એવું થતું નથી, એટલે મારે વોટ્સએપમાં કંઈક મોકલવું પડે. એજ્યુકેટ યોરસેલ્ફ. યુ આર નોટ ડુઈંગ ધેટ. Whatever is taught in the class, you are not putting those into practice. અને પ્રેક્ટિસમાં ન મુકાય ત્યાં સુધી એ ભણવાનું પૂરું થતું નથી. So that is કારણ કે કોઈને પણ આશ્ચર્ય તો થવું જોઈએ ને કે મશીન કેમ પોએમ બનાવે. અમે ક્લાસમાં જોયું, મને જાતે બનાવવા દો જોઈએ. આટલી ક્યુરિયોસિટી તો કોઈનામાં પણ હોય, થવી જ જોઈએ આટલી ક્યુરિયોસિટી કે આ જે નમૂનો ક્લાસમાં જોયો આપણે એ કામ કેમ કરે. એ તો એવું તો નથી કે હું ઘરે જઈને સંતાડી દઉં, મારી તિજોરીમાં મૂકી દઉં. This is all everywhere. So either you might have googled and tried, or you might have asked for the link. But I think neither of those things has happened. That is why this worry, and we have to tell that educate yourself and do this and connect the dot, otherwise learning is not happening as such also. Okay, so this is, any other points here? Okay, so then we have started moving in new criticism. We got a basic understanding of new criticism. Anybody can tell me now, if somebody is asking you what is new criticism, how will you define what according to you is new criticism? Criticism obviously is reading literature. Yes, it is reading literature. And if this is a new way of reading literature, then how it is different from old way of reading literature? So you can say that old way means you were reading in terms of history, you were reading in terms of author, biographical reading, this reading, that reading, all those things you were doing. So that was old way of reading literature. New, now what is new? Who will tell me? How do you see new literature then? What will be your simple definition? Yes.
Simple definition for new criticism, I would give that in new criticism we need to criticize the work or a poetry, not a writer or a poet who has produced it.
Okay, first point that our honest criticism, sensitive appreciation is directed upon poetry, not upon the poet. That is one condition that we see there. Okay, then we concentrate on poetry. Then what next? Yes.
We should study the poetry or criticize the poetry by the physical or intellectual aspects of that literary text.
Physical or literary aspect. Rather than that, we have to use the word verbal, textual analysis, verbal study, verbal aspects of the text. Yes, you have to have a close reading. New criticism means having a close reading of the text, of the words. So it is verbal reading, verbal. It is in that way not intellectual. Later on, if the language is intellectual, then those capacities are required. Otherwise, verbal analysis, textual analysis, and verbal analysis of the poem is necessary as a part of this. So in new criticism, we sit down to analyze the text, cutting it from its connection with the writer as well as the time in which it is written. So keeping it aloof from time and space and everything, and it is just, we can say, the poem is just a pile of words. એક પોયમ કદાચ આપણે એમ જોઈએ કે એ શબ્દોનો ઢગલો છે અને આપણે શબ્દોને વિખવાના છે, શબ્દોને જુદા તારવીને એનો અર્થ કાઢવાનો છે કે આ શબ્દો આ શું કહે છે ને બધા શબ્દો ભેગા થાય તો કંઈક આ કાવ્ય આવું કંઈક કહેવા માંગે છે. ત્યાં કવિ ક્યાંય છે નહીં. Author is dead now, so there is no poet, but there is this there. So this is how we trying to see that. Yes.
A question on new criticism, that there is no need to think of poet or not while criticizing the work of art. But sir, I think a drawback is there of that suppose somebody has written something and we are taking it as per our own understanding. Then will it be, I mean, and that the poet wants to convey something and we are taking in some other form. Will it be destructive?
Okay, yeah, so we can keep this point in mind. Yes.
I have also question that no, all the authors most of the time write after feeling something, like whether it is spontaneous or not. But for example, Wordsworth, or for example even war poetry, we can say poet felt that what is happening there and then he wrote that. So if we are reading that and what the meaning will hold, the meaning sometimes change.
Okay, so there is an experience. Let us see that. Yeah, and what you? Yeah.
Yes, sir. I have an example from Mahabharata in Gujarati. Some Gujarati was there is a place when Kunti speaks. Perhaps Kunti or Arjuna speaks that now Yuddha age Kalyan. So nowadays we find that people are writing on their bike or car that Yuddha age Kalyan, taking only these things that they think that okay, the fighting or battle is only the solution of solve the problem. But it is not so. But the Kunti speaks that away to Yuddha age Kalyan. So doing all the things, all the persuasion Krishna went to the court of Dhritarashtra, and he persuaded all the things, but they did not yield to him. And now then Kunti, perhaps Arjuna speaks that now Yuddha age Kalyan. Now the battle is the only solution. But people is taking only the Yuddha age Kalyan or the battle as the solution. It's a different context. So there can be a drawback of that.
Okay, so 2 points that we can see here in this, and these are the problems of doing a new critical reading, or the limitations of doing a new critical reading. But still, the argument given in favor of new criticism in this context is this, that anybody who is writing out of their experience, that is fine, that experience is required. If you have an experience, you can write in a better way. But then all great of work of arts are not written only out of the experience of an individual. What is important for work of art is imagination. Yes. The role of imagination is very important, and so the author imagines all those situations. The author might not have suffered from a tsunami or earthquake, but he would imagine those things. So work of art is obviously of experience, but only experience cannot make work of art. If I have been very unhappy, I can't write poems. It will not be. So all unhappy people cannot write a good, like, because people say that this unhappiness is necessary to write a work of art. Only happiness is not required. That is also the idea. You might have, for example, this idea is used in many of the popular Bollywood cinema also. There was one film, Ashiki, quite an old film, Ashiki. And then there was this young fellow protagonist who was a singer, and he goes to the people to say, and then the person rejects that, still your voice is not mature enough. And then he's in love with somebody, and then he falls out of love, and now he is drinking tea or wine and wailing for the love, and then sings a song, and that person listens, he says, now there is something in your voice. So you have to undergo unhappiness to sing in a better way. That is what we did in Rockstar also. So if you are happy, you can't be a good singer or a good poet or a good writer. You have to undergo unhappiness. Then you feel that. That is, on that archetype, there are lots of narratives are there. People do believe, and to some extent it is quite true also. But all people who are unhappy cannot write a work of art. So we can nullify that, because what is required is imagination, and the capacity to write a work of art also is required. And everybody who is writing, like people like Shakespeare or Tagore or Leo Tolstoy in Russia, they have written such a kind of a work that you can't imagine that one person might have experienced all those things. Not possible. So you write about the sentiments of a little girl to an old lady. You may say little childhood you have experienced, so it comes, but you have not experienced old age. You had never been of 80 years. You died in 50s. But in 40s you were writing about old people. So from where it comes from imagination. So that argument that experience of unhappiness is necessary, it is necessary, but it is not something that is final. What is important is imagination. Can you imagine about that or not? That is very important. So even when it goes to acting, there was a film like Saransh. Saransh was a film where Anupam Kher, it was Anupam Kher's first film, and he played a role of an old fellow of 60 years old. But he was in his 20s then. But people never realized that this is some young person playing a role of an old fellow. So that is his genius. So it is not that you have experienced old age and then only you become a good actor of an old age. So that is the answer to that experience is necessary or not. We can say imagination is more important rather than experience. Imagination for any creative work, one should imagine all those kinds of things. Experience can help. Experience can support the imagination, but not necessarily required as part of this. Second point, you're saying that out of context, for example, youth age kalyan, if you see that, then there is those words have a meaning, a different meaning in context of Mahabharata. And when people use today that word, it makes a new context altogether. So these words have a new meaning now. It doesn't have that meaning only. Meaning is changing. It is not the meaning of Mahabharata, but it is a new meaning altogether in which that is happening, or it gives a new context also of that. So we have to see that these words have a meaning in a context or relation with other words. So what is that in relation of that these words are uttered? What is that context? So that context is not a verbal context perhaps, it is a non-verbal context. It may be a non-verbal context, but there might be some context in which these words are spoken. So the larger context is obviously very communal also. Anybody who is writing such kind of things, they will be highly religious or believe into the religious partition against Hindu Muslim, and they want to give this message that with Muslims youth age kalyan, or you are anti-Gandhi and so you are saying youth age kalyan. So you are making a message against the Gandhians that no, peace is not the solution, youth age kalyan. So there is that context which is invisible. So but that gets very clear. One can easily see even that context in a given thing also. For example, this one blog I can show. Let me put this here. So when you see this context which has its own meaning, and that is itself a new critical reading. So when you see that in a given context, then obviously there is a meaning which is very clear in those things. Now when we see this iconography, or iconography means image making of somebody, and for a subsequent time people do make various kinds of images of this. So when you study the image of Parshuram, so how once if Parshuram was drawn like this, how come it became like this? The iconography of Parshuram has changed, and there is a meaning into that. No? There was a meaning there also. So you can say that once upon a time, if you had a big belly, you were powerful. Once upon a time. So you were drawing people with big belly. It means you are powerful. Now biceps, this six pack and eight pack are very important to become powerful. So there is a meaning there. So that is the meaning is very much there around that text also. And the image of Hanuman, which has undergone a very interesting change. Hanuman is seen as a bhakta, very noble, one who is never angry. That kind of an image of, if you see here, this is again the image of Hanuman, who is a good, very decent, very calm, completely opposite of any kind of anger or other kinds of things there. And then this also, the iconography of Hanuman. And now suddenly you see Hanuman like this. Hanuman full of anger. So now it is not out of context. It has its own context where there is a meaning. So we just have to locate the context in which these stickers are made, which are put on car or on vehicles. But there is a narration, which is an invisible narration. So the verbal analysis can be done of this also. But the words which are in a way not visible, but there is a language which is there in society. It is not completely absent. There is a kind of a language where perhaps the iconography on t-shirts, another thing of Hanuman has changed, and people still wants to use Hanuman, but for Yudh Ej Kalyan. You want to use Hanuman. So this is a new image of Hanuman that people use, and they display. Obviously saffron color also is there. Saffron color also, which is also becoming the color of kind of aggression and other things there. So in that way we can still see that new criticism in this context is helpful. It is helpful to us. So all these meanings are not out of context. They are contextual. They are textual. These meanings are textual. Only we have to locate the text of this utterance. We have to locate the text of that, and then we say that, well, this has a particular meaning in this discourse. આ પ્રકારના આ ચર્ચા કે ડિસ્કશનમાં એમનો એક અર્થ છે, એ નિરર્થક નથી. નિરર્થક નથી. So that again we can put close reading of the reading between the lines becomes necessary there also. Okay, but you can use the same example also, that we need to go somewhere outside also. The same example we can use for the thing also.
I have one example. Like people use the word youth and wood for contrast of each other. Like one is for peace and the other one is for violence. So when we put in this
Yes, yeah, that also you can use that also. Yudh or Budh. So there is a pras of the word, poetic. It is a good poetic way of putting the things, but there is a paradox also. There is a paradox which gives adds a kind of a meaning to the language. Paradox also adds meaning to the language. So meaning is not in a particular word, but when one word is used with another word, there is a meaning in that. That is also verbal study. So when a word like yudh comes isolated in a different context, it has a different meaning. When you see in context of Mahabharata, is a different meaning. When people use that half quote in a different, it has a different meaning. And when you say yudh and budh, it has a different meaning. But all the word yudh keeps on changing its meaning in different way in the different context also in those things. But that is the end result of verbal study. We have to do verbal analysis for that. That is why we say that the meaning of word is not static. It keeps on changing there, and where it is used in relation to other words, we may find that. So again here new criticism is helping us rather than going against new criticism. New criticism is helping us in understanding that the meaning words can be read in multiple ways also. One example we can see, and then before we go for break, and then we enter into the other things here. So like the word yudh and the different things, and it has its own semantic field wherein these utterances are becoming important. One example let us see, and then we will go for a break into seeing this verbal analysis. For example, let us say there are this 4 words. Yes, SRK hits home run. So how do we mean? How do we extract meaning from this? Yes, apostrophe om. Yes, what meaning, or how do you extract the meaning? The full sentence or bit by bit? Yes. Okay. So yes, it is home run.
In context of the baseball.
Okay. SRK hits a home run. Yes. And home run is coming from the semantic field of baseball, sports. Yes, baseball is a sports. So there is something like home run, and from where the word is coming. Is anybody others also following this? Because I have said this in one of the videos also, in one of the live talk also I have used this example or this. Okay, so well, but whatever he has said, are other getting the sense of that or not? Yes. Okay. So hits home run, and home run, this is the short form or of the contracted form. In language we use contracted form of the spellings. So this word is used here, and it is coming from the semantic field of baseball, and there is something like home run. Now, so what does it mean? If this is opened up, this much we have opened by verbal. So what is the meaning of this, or what is this trying to tell us? Now SRK means what? The name, is it the name of a player? It is player or actor? Actor, you can say. Shah Rukh Khan, short form for Shah Rukh Khan. Now this has a semantic field of cinema, and in cinema also specifically Bollywood. So those who are not aware about Bollywood will not understand what SRK stands for. The way those who are not aware about baseball cannot understand what this home run is for. So you're not aware about baseball, you don't know what is home run. Because words are not difficult. Home or run, you don't have to look into dictionary to see that, a home run. But home run is not running to home when we are free from our work and we run to home. It is not that running home. So one can say, why that is not that running home? Why that is not that? That also can be the question. So you can say, well, I am reading this that SRK hit somebody and so somebody ran to home. So it can be that also. Why that is not the meaning then? Yeah. There must be something કે એ અર્થ નથી, એ પણ સાબિત તો કરવું પડે કે આ શું કામ નથી, આને કોઈને માર્યું ને ઘરે ભાગી ગયો. If you say home is home, well, if you say no, this is not home, this is home, then if you say no, I am not saying this home as home, I am saying this is there is a religious field, religious semantic field which I am seeing here. And if this is Khan, then I do read something into that about religious strife. That Shah Rukh Khan might have made some comment about Islam or Hindu, and so the Hindu sentiments might have hurt. So this heat is hurting Hindu sentiments. Possible. Why that is not possible if you read Om as this Om also. So whichever, what we require is semantic fields where the meanings are lying. Meanings are not lying with the words. They are lying into their semantic field. So once we locate that this word is in this semantic field, then we can say this is the meaning. So SRK stands for Shah Rukh Khan or a film actor only for those for whom the semantic field of Bollywood is clear. Because we know that only cinema will not work. We are not knowing who is Allu Arjun also. We are not knowing names, even if people are watching the films of South India, but they don't know the names of heroes and heroines. They know them only by actors, or even if when we watch Hollywood film, rarely people know the name of actors. They know them by James Bond or a kind of a thing, but then people keep on changing in that way also. So Bollywood, and there you see this. Okay, even if this is clear, then also what is the meaning? Still, what is the meaning? What all this combination of the word will tell us? What is it about? For example, if you want to say home run, now what does it mean? Home run means what? Even if it is in the baseball terminology, then there should be some meaning. For example, if you are aware about cricket, and if somebody says LBW, then we know what is LBW, or run out, or six, or four, or boundary. You know the meaning of that how. So we use that word. કોઈ અચાનક કોઈને સફળતા મળતા મળતા ન મળી હોય તો આપણે કે રન આઉટ થઈ ગયો. બસ આમ પહોંચવાનો હતો ને આઉટ થઈ ગયો. રન આઉટ થઈ જાય. રન આઉટમાં કોઈ બીજાએ પણ રોલ પ્લે કર્યો હોય. સામેવાળો પ્લેયર પણ રન આઉટ કરી દે. એટલે એ રીતે રન આઉટ શબ્દ ઘણી જુદી જુદી રીતે લોકો વાપરે. અથવા LBW થઈ જવું એટલે અનાયાસ આઉટ થઈ જવું, ભૂલમાં આઉટ થઈ જવું, અથવા હિટ વિકેટ થઈ જવું. તો એ હિટ વિકેટ આ બધી ક્રિકેટની ટર્મિનોલોજી ખબર હોય તો એ ભાષાનો જે પ્રયોગ થતો હોય આપણને ખ્યાલ આવે કે સેમેન્ટિક ફિલ્ડ ઓફ ક્રિકેટ. બટ હિયર બેઝબોલ હોમ રન મીન્સ વોટ? It's like a six in cricket. Yeah. Yes, sir. So it means it is going out of the boundary. The ball is going out of boundary. And in baseball there are these four corners. Here there is a bowler. Here there is a batsman here. And then once you hit, then you move here. Then another player. Then you move here. Then you move here. So now, if at all the four corners people are standing, then when somebody hits, everybody goes home. Everybody will turn back, come. So you will get maximum score in baseball. So when you hit outside, everybody will come back to home. And you score more runs in that capacity. That is how the baseball system works. So it means that something very successful. The meaning of home run is success. The meaning of six is success. Maximum success. In one maximum ball in cricket, you can get 6 runs. And once you hit, it is the optimum success that you have got. There is no better success in a given moment in baseball than this. So what is the meaning of home run? Success. Meaning is success. So hits success. SRK hits success. That is what we see now. Now what is that? Where, how, when, what kind of success is people are talking about, or these lines are talking about? Now any connection?
Now he's doing well in his acting. He is doing well, or he has become a famous actor.
He has become a famous actor, so that is, it is about that. Or can you read any other thing? Like if you say famous actor, then is there anything which speaks about that? Is there any of the film connected with Om? Om Shanti Om. So this is about the success of Om Shanti Om. This is the news about the success of the film Om Shanti Om. અમેરિકાના છાપામાં આ રીતે સમાચાર આવેલા કે SRK hits home run. એટલે એની ઓમ શાંતિ ઓમ સફળ ગઈ છે. આ કહેવાનું છે આમાં કવિ એ કહેવા માંગે છે કે શાહરુખ ખાનની ઓમ શાંતિ ઓમ સફળ ફિલ્મ છે. કહેવું કઈ રીતે? આ રીતે એને કહ્યું. એટલે આમાં કવિ અથવા આ શબ્દો શું કહેવા માંગે છે તો કે આ કે શાહરુખ ખાનની ઓમ શાંતિ ઓમ સફળ ગઈ. એ બધાના અર્થ આની અંદર હોવા જોઈએ. That's why you write home like this. એટલે આ ઓમ આ રીતે ખાસ લખ્યો છે કે એમાં એ તમે જો એ ન મૂક્યું હોય તો you can't say. How can you say that this is about Om Shanti Om? Why not about any other film? Why? Because that is verbal analysis. So you will say that, well, what is the word that is giving you that meaning? Which is the word that is giving you whatever meaning? And then the word, why that word means that, then you explore and you do analysis of that also. So if you do the analysis of these 4 words, you will be able to write a very long blog or a long essay on the exploration of 4 words. આપણે જે ચર્ચા કરી છેલ્લી 5-10 મિનિટમાં એ બધા શબ્દો લખવા જાવ તો કદાચ 1000 શબ્દો આપણે બોલી લીધા હશે. 4 શબ્દોના એનાલિસિસમાં 1000 શબ્દોના આપણે ઉપયોગ. This is called analysis. So when you do the analysis of poem, this is how you explore, either write or speak about that, how each and every word you are exploring, that is important. That is where textual analysis becomes important, and you deliberately go into the direction of the wrong meaning also. Deliberately you do that because it is a part of analysis. This is what I.A. Richards is also doing. That deliberately you try to read the meaning that is not the meaning. Deliberately you do that. That helps you in analysis. That is where neti works. Not this. First you say, is it this? Then you say, no, not this. Is it this? Then you say, no, not this also. Then is it this? Then you say, well, slightly this. Then what is exactly? You write about this. But what is it not? You have to analyze when you write. Again, I repeat this because every time I tell, but nobody is writing in their blog this. They always write what is the right answer. They don't write what is not the right answer. That analysis people don't do when the thinking activity is given. So you have to exactly do that. That well, you are like having a dialogue with your reader, imaginary reader, and you say that you might be reading this and you might think that this is the meaning and this meaning can lead to this direction, but no, that is not the meaning. Then what is the meaning? Well, let us see in this way. Then you move in this way, that well, that also is not the meaning. Then what is the meaning? Again you write that. So you keep on asking questions and answers, even in your thinking activity also. You keep on asking questions and keep on writing answers also. So that is as if like in a conversational style, you are doing thinking activity. Thinking activity normally is conversational, that we do there. Okay, so this is an example that how these words can mean variety of things, and verbal analysis becomes very interesting to explore the shades of the meaning that the word might have. So many shades of the meaning the word might have, that all can be explored when we do new criticism. That is the maximum, that is the best advantage of new critical study. It helps us understand language in a better way. It helps us understand language in a much deeper and better way. The various shades of language we understand when we do that. Though as we say that there are limitations are there to can we explore the entire text completely or not. You may say that well, if I don't know about Bollywood or baseball, then these words are nothing to me. So I should know something about baseball or I should know something about Bollywood. Without that I can't understand those things. So you can say well, that external understanding is necessary. But then T.S. Eliot would say that that becomes a part of your historical sense. If you have read, then you know it. If you have not read, you don't know. So that becomes a part of, so that historical sense if you have, then you know from where the words are emerging, from where the words are coming, and while they are coming, with what kind of meanings, traces of meaning they come with, traces of meanings that they come. So then again you can do only textual analysis and still reach to the root of the meaning, the right meaning perhaps that is there in the poem. Or you can also question, is there only one meaning in a poem? You may say no, multiple meanings are also there. Multiple meanings are also possible in a given poem. It is not that everybody has to reach to only one meaning. People can say, well, I think this is this meaning also. You just have to prove why you think that. You just have to prove, and then you can say that my meaning also is the right meaning. Okay, so in this direction we will move on after the break with the name of few other new critics, and we'll see this is because this becomes a part of reader response theory. So that we will see after the break here. Okay, so we end this class here, and after the break of 30 minutes we meet again. Okay.